Jimmy Butler just made his debut in a Warriors win against the Bulls, and it became immediately clear that he is going to be a massive upgrade for Golden State. The first thing that you're going to notice when you're watching Jimmy Butler on the Warriors is that his passing, his playmaking is going to be massive for them, because really throughout Curry's career, they haven't wanted him to be this on-ball pick-and-roll playmaker guy a ton. They go to it sometimes, but they want a movement offense. They want guys working off the ball. They don't want the ball to always be stuck in one place, and that would mean that they would have someone like Draymond Green initiate a lot of the offense at the top of the key or from the post. Obviously, when they had someone like Kevin Durant, they would allow him to initiate and isolate. But now that Draymond's getting older, isn't effective offensively, and someone like Dennis Schroeder is now gone, they've gone through a couple of different guards where they've tried to find a backcourt partner alongside Steph. They've been unsuccessful with all of those different options, but now they have Jimmy Butler, who isn't necessarily typically seen as this great passer, but because of his size and his strength, he provides a playmaking and a passing element for the Warriors that they just didn't have. And it's going to unlock so much good stuff for Steph Curry as well, because he doesn't have to worry about creating all the time, and he doesn't have to worry about the fact that it's just Draymond out there. When Draymond comes off the floor, the Warriors didn't really have any other options. The other thing that's going to be huge for them that was immediately apparent in this Bulls game is Jimmy Butler is going to get to the free throw line. That has been a hallmark of his career. He's going to be physical. He's going to be near the rim, and especially in the postseason, he's going to get guys off their feet. He's going to draw fouls, and he's going to get to the free throw line. And that is huge for Golden State, because they are traditionally, as well as this season, one of the worst teams in the league at getting to the line. As of this recording, I think they're 27th in free throw attempts in the entire league, and not getting that kind of easy offense all the time makes it really difficult to put together a high-level NBA offense. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the roster. Draymond's not going to the free throw line a ton because he doesn't want to shoot free throws. Steph does get to the free throw line a decent amount, but not as much as your typical, primary star guy. Then a bunch of these other guys, they're settling for jumpers, they're working off the ball, they're doing all these different things, and there hasn't been as much of the, backdoor cuts, getting to the free throw line, or slipping some of these screens and getting to the line. That stuff hasn't been there for Golden State this year, and typically getting to the free throw line hasn't been something they've done well anyway in the Curry era. Now with Butler there, that's going to be a huge upgrade for them. And along with that, you're going to see Jimmy Butler in the post a little bit more than I think you would typically expect, for two reasons. One, because teams love to either double Steph or switch against him on all these screens, and that's going to leave a lot of mismatches around the floor. And prior to this, they didn't really have a guy they could go to and say, hey, go ahead and punish that mismatch. Sometimes it's Jonathan Kuminga when he's healthy, but he's just not skilled enough as a scorer to really truly take advantage of those all the time. Jimmy Butler can. If you're going to set, Jimmy Butler set a screen, have Steph come up, and you're going to switch those two guys, and a guy you had guarding Steph is now guarding Jimmy, and if they're 6'1", 6'2", they're kind of light, he's going to take them into the post, and he's going to punish that mismatch. And all of the Draymond stuff that Golden State has done the entirety of the time that Draymond is there, where they get on the ball in the low post and then let him play make from there. They run screens from there, not even necessarily for him as a scoring threat, but just as an option on the floor while they run all of these other actions. That stuff can now be done through Jimmy Butler, and you add the scoring threat of him in the post potentially against one of those mismatches. That is an offensive wrinkle that you're going to continue to see from Golden State. And just in one game, you could see all the different ways that they're going to use Jimmy Butler. He's going to be in the post. He's going to be punishing mismatches. He's going to be sealing guys under the rim. He's going to be driving to the rim to create free throw opportunities, playmaking for others. And there's going to be some screening actions with Jimmy. Again, it's not like he's exactly like Draymond Green, but because he's not an excellent floor spacer, and because he has such a great feel for the game, he can do a lot of the screening even for Steph and slipping to the rim, the 4-on-3 stuff that Draymond has been so good with, screening off the ball, like I said, getting some of those switches with Steph's man so that he can punish in the post. Jimmy Butler was as active of a screener as he's been in a very long time in this Warriors game last night, which means he's engaged, he's locked in, he wants to help this team win. And if you're getting an active and engaged Jimmy Butler that's willing to screen, that's willing to post, that's willing to steal at the rim, that's willing to guard, that's willing to get to the free throw line, all that stuff, it's a huge upgrade for Golden State. It was a question mark for Miami, obviously, because of his motivations for leaving, and it was a question mark for any team that was going to trade for them. It's only been one game, but this version of Jimmy Butler is way better than personally what I thought they were going to get. Now, on the other side of the floor, defensively, Jimmy Butler is never going to be this elite kind of guy. He's just not that guy anymore. That's just not what he does. But there was some, getting in the passing lanes, these defensive instincts, just providing an energy and an aggression and a physicality on both ends of the floor, including defensively, that again is going to be helpful for the Warriors. I wasn't a huge fan of the fit between him and Golden State, and obviously it's only one game, but I wasn't a huge fan because of the contract, because of his age, because I didn't know if he was going to show up and be all that motivated, because this was clearly like his second choice. Like, he didn't want to go there initially. He wanted to go to Phoenix, and then ultimately ended up with the Warriors. And I was just concerned about the fact that it didn't really upgrade their roster in a significant way in terms of a title chase, and I saw some good fits on the roster, but overall I wasn't a huge fan. But if this is the way that he plays, granted it's the Bulls, but if this is the way that he plays, this style of play where he fits in so perfectly immediately with everything that the Warriors do, this can absolutely be a dangerous team in the postseason. They still have to figure out some of their spacing stuff. Like, they need Buddy Hield to kind of go back to the guy that he was in the beginning of the year, quite frankly. They need to be healthy with Draymond and Steph and Jimmy. That's another concern. They need to get Kuminga back and see how all of that fits. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a smaller role for Jonathan Kuminga when he comes back from injury, just because Jimmy Butler's going to take up a lot of that stuff, and it's going to be hard to have like Looney, Draymond, Kuminga, Jimmy out there. Like, that's just not enough spacing. And when it comes to Jimmy Butler and Jonathan Kuminga, that's one of the things neither of them do, is they don't space well from three. And so that's just going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on when Kuminga comes back. But if we know anything about Jimmy Butler, in the postseason, he has a way of carrying teams and getting teams further in the postseason than they should. And going back to that title for the Warriors in 2022, same thing could potentially be said about Steph and the way that this roster has been built, although obviously it's a different roster now. Like, they have this tendency and have been proven to go further in the playoffs, not only than anybody expected them to, but to go all the way and win the title. I'm not saying the Warriors are going to win the title this season, but it does move the needle for me a little bit more than I realized just after seeing Jimmy play in one game. Like I said, it's Chicago. They were actually down a bunch in the first half, and then they had this crazy comeback and were awesome. It was a huge Steph game, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of that. If we see a re-energized, rejuvenated Steph Curry playing alongside Jimmy Butler, not having as much offensive responsibility, not having that burden of every time Steph doesn't shoot the ball a ton or doesn't have a great quarter, the Warriors are just getting blown out in all these games. He doesn't have that hanging over him, and he doesn't have to expend as much energy because things are a little easier for him. Every time they send two at him, all of a sudden it's Jimmy Butler at the rim. It's Jimmy Butler in a mismatch. It's Jimmy Butler sealing someone under the rim. And he can kind of go back to the version of himself that he was. Like, think about like the 2019 finals when KD gets hurt and Clay gets hurt. Like, the entire offense was just Steph running around, yes, getting shots, but also getting open looks for others because they were so worried about Steph. They didn't want him to be the one that won the game for them. Well, now it's going to be like that. Steph can run around. He can create all of this space for everyone else. And then you've got, Jimmy Butler cutting back door. You've got Draymond in the post. You've got Jonathan Kuminga potentially when he comes back driving to the rim. All that stuff. There's just a different feel to this team now with Jimmy there because of the free throws, the defensive impact, the aggression, the physicality, the passing, the playmaking, the post-up stuff. It was as perfect of an immediate fit as you could have possibly expected as a Warriors fan. There's going to be times in the postseason where the spacing is weird and you're trying to figure out what your best lineup is, and Jonathan Kuminga is like sulking on the bench because he's only played 9 minutes in game 6 of a playoff series. Like, that stuff is probably going to happen, assuming they make it to the postseason, because the Western Conference is really tough. But if they can figure it out, if they can go like Steph, Hield, Draymond, Jimmy, and somebody else, because Wiggins makes their lineups kind of a little bit weird because Jimmy just isn't as big as Wiggins, so having that like in-between swing is a little bit weird. But if they can figure out all that stuff, like, it's not a team that I would necessarily be excited about playing in the postseason because of Jimmy Butler's postseason pedigree, because of Steph Curry's postseason pedigree, because it's a team that just has a tendency to figure it out at times in the postseason. They need to win a couple of these winnable games they've got coming up to give themselves a little bit more of a cushion in a potential play-in or playoff race. But like I said, if you're a Warriors fan, you're going into that game thinking, man, I don't know what version of Jimmy Butler we're going to get. Like, I'm excited, but this felt like a desperation move. I'm really not sure how exactly this is going to go. It wasn't a perfect debut, but whatever your expectations were, he absolutely exceeded them in his first game as a Warrior.